Anthony Johnson's MMA career has seen him grow as a fighter in both skill and size. He was a welterweight standout early on by beating his opponents with his strong wrestling base and heavy hands. But after years of struggling to cut to 170 pounds, he made the jump to 205 where he quickly became one of the scariest fighters in the division. But as much success as he found in these weight classes, he was unable to capture the UFC title. So how good was Anthony Johnson actually? Hey guys, it's Kiiyon, and today I want to talk about Anthony Rumble Johnson. In this video, we're going to take a look at his career to really understand how good he actually was. And shout out to all the Undisputed members on my Patreon. I really thank you for your support. If you want a shout out in my next video as well as early access to videos like this one, then sign up to become an Undisputed member on my Patreon today. Now let's get to the video. In 2006, after going 3-0 in the local circuit, Anthony Johnson would go on to make his UFC debut the following year in the welterweight division against Chad Reiner. He was 23 years old and taking the fight on short notice, but he made the most of it by knocking out Chad 13 seconds into the fight with a heavy combo. After this win, Anthony fought Rich Clemente but missed weight by 6 pounds. Johnson was aggressive early in the fight by pressing forward with his striking and even knocking down Clemente a minute into the fight. But Rich was able to land heavy leg kicks and counter punches. He then secured a takedown and took a hold of Anthony's back, but Johnson reversed the position with a Kimura attempt. In the second round, both men were finding success on the feet. Anthony took the fight to the ground but would be reversed and have his back taken by Rich, who secured the rear naked choke. Following his first career loss, Johnson fought Tommy Spear. He dominated Tommy quickly on the feet, who had no answers for his striking. Anthony would finish him off with a right hand 51 seconds into the fight. Back in the win column, Johnson was looking for 2 in a row when he fought Kevin Burns on July of 2008. He found success early by taking down Kevin, as apart from his heavy hands, Anthony was a junior college national wrestling champion. He began to connect with heavy shots early in the second and was able to deny the takedowns from Kevin. But throughout this fight, Kevin would poke Johnson in the eyes, and it was definitely helping him gain momentum. In fact, the fight ended with an eye poke that sent Anthony down immediately. The fight was called off, and even though a disqualification was expected to be announced, the fight was declared a TKO win for Kevin. And after failing to overturn the decision, Johnson would fight Burns again in December. In the rematch, Anthony found success by taking the fight to the ground, where he landed ground and pound and avoided eye pokes. But he finished the fight on the feet in the third round by connecting with a head kick that knocked Burns out cold. In his next fight against Luigi Fioravanti, the two were feeling each other out on the feet before Anthony connected with a right hand that stunned Luigi. He finished the fight on the ground by strikes. His next fight was against Yoshiyuki Yoshida. Anthony missed weight by 6 pounds, but in the fight he was aggressive with his striking from the start. Yoshida had no answers and ended up getting knocked out in the first round. The fight lasted for 41 seconds. Johnson's next fight was against Josh Koscheck. After feeling each other out on the feet and landing an illegal knee on Koscheck, Anthony got taken down at the end of the first, and that would continue in the second. This time Koscheck got a hold of Johnson's back and secured the rear naked choke. Following this loss, Anthony suffered a knee injury and discussed wanting to move up to middleweight, as he had to cut 55 pounds to make 170. Yet after a year-and-a-half layoff, he came back to fight at welterweight against Dan Hardy. Johnson was dominant in this fight as he was able to knock down Dan early with a head kick. And even though he was unable to finish the fight, the momentum definitely shifted in the favor of Anthony, who was now securing takedowns and controlling Hardy on the floor. After 3 rounds, John won the unanimous decision. His next fight was in October against Charlie Brennaman. He connected with a head kick that dropped Charlie and would force the ref to stop the fight, which many would call premature. Regardless, Anthony's next matchup was against Vitor Belfort at middleweight in Brazil. Even though this was Johnson's first time cutting to 185 instead of 170, he still missed the middleweight limit by 11 pounds. And the result of the fight was also not good, as he lost in the first round by rear naked choke. To make everything worse, Anthony was cut by the UFC. His first fight out of the promotion was against David Branch. The bout was set for middleweight, but Johnson missed weight by 8 pounds, and this resulted in Branch to stop cutting and taking the fight at catchweight. In the fight, Anthony was effective with his striking, takedowns, and ground and pound. The most danger he was in was a triangle choke at the end of the second round, but Johnson survived and would go on to win the unanimous decision. Following this win, Anthony made his light heavyweight debut against Estevez Jones, 205 pounds. Yet Johnson was the aggressor in the striking and grappling. It was crazy to see that his power and strength was still able to work in the light heavyweight division. The fight ended in the second round when Anthony took down Estevez again and began raining heavy ground and pound. Once again, crazy for a former welterweight. Johnson's next fight was against Jake Rosholt. After a dominant first round of ground and pound by Anthony, he finished Jake in the second with a barrage of punches before landing a head kick that stopped the fight. Johnson would then sign with the newly found MMA promotion, World Series of Fighting. On their first card, he fought DJ Linderman. After connecting with a heavy nut shot, the action continued with heavy strikes by Anthony and a takedown where he controlled DJ on the floor. But when it got back up, DJ poked Johnson in the eye. Anthony was looking for ref Herb Dean to stop the action, but he didn't, and DJ came rushing in only for Johnson to knock him out with a right hand. It was pretty funny. On the second World Series of Fighting card, Anthony moved up to heavyweight to fight former UFC heavyweight champion, Andrei Arlovski. The fight was a battle between the two men who were standing in front of each other and trading heavy shots, which was absolutely crazy to see Johnson, who was a former welterweight, be a part of. Yet he found success in his striking and controlled Andrei in the clinch. At the end of the first, Johnson was really close to finishing the fight, but the bell saved Arlovski. Regardless, Anthony continued to perform well in this fight and even secured a takedown in the second round, who would ultimately take home the decision win and go on to fight Mike Kyle in January of 2014. He finished the fight 2 minutes into the first with a counter right that knocked Mike out cold. Now, after going 6-0 since leaving the UFC, they were impressed with his recent run at light heavyweight and decided to sign him back to a 4-fight deal. In his first fight back with the promotion, Anthony fought Phil Davis. Phil was a favorite in this fight and a very dominant wrestler, but Johnson was able to stop his takedowns and connect with heavy shots throughout the 3 rounds. It was crazy to see once again, and it earned him the unanimous decision win, which instantly made him a top contender in the light heavyweight division. His next fight was against former Pride heavyweight and UFC interim heavyweight champion, Rodrigo Nogueira. The fight ended in 44 seconds after Anthony knocked out Nogueira with a flurry of punches. After this win, Johnson went to Sweden to fight Alexander Gustafsson, and Gustafsson was seen as the favorite, as at this point, he was viewed as one of the best light heavyweights not named John Jones. But Anthony was able to rock Gustafsson early and have him in all sorts of trouble. Anthony would eventually finish him off on the floor by strikes, upsetting the Swedish crowd and shocking the entire MMA world. This monumental win set Johnson up to fight light heavyweight champion John Jones. But John was stripped of the title prior to the fight due to a hit-and-run incident. He was replaced by Daniel Cormier, and the fight was now for the vacant belt. Both men connected early with kicks and punches. Anthony connected with a right that knocked down Cormier for the first time in his career. But Daniel got back up and dominated Johnson with his wrestling. The fight would continue like this for 3 rounds. At one point, Cormier was close to securing a Kimura, but he did secure the rear naked choke in the 3rd round that forced Anthony to tap. After this title loss, Johnson came back at UFC 191 to fight Jimmy Manuwa. He outstruck and out-wrestled him before connecting with a big right that dropped Jimmy. Anthony finished the fight on the ground with strikes. After this win, Johnson fought Ryan Bader. Bader attempted to take the fight down, but to no success. Johnson was up on top defending a Kimura attempt before raining down heavy ground and pound that finished the fight in 86 seconds. But his next fight against Glover Teixeira was much quicker. Anthony connected with an uppercut 13 seconds into the fight to knock Glover out before adding in a couple more ground strikes. He was the obvious #1 contender after going on a 3-fight win streak that had all his opponents knocked out. So at UFC 210, he fought UFC light heavyweight champ Daniel Cormier for a second time. Many thought that Anthony would be able to knock out Daniel this time around, as the hype behind his heavy hands in the light heavyweight division was real. All of his wins at light heavyweight, aside from Phil Davis, was a finish that earned him the performance of the night. People were beginning to consider Anthony Johnson as the heaviest hitter in the history of the sport. But instead of trying to strike with Cormier, Johnson decided to wrestle him. Yes, he tried to out-wrestle a former Olympic wrestler. And I get that he has skills on the ground of his own, but nothing compared to Daniel Cormier, whose striking was not up to par with Anthony's either, which is why many were confused to see his game plan unfold, including his corner. Even though Johnson scored a few takedowns in this fight, it was wasted energy that could have been used to stand up and pick Cormier apart with his striking. And Daniel made his opportunity to take down Anthony and secure the rear naked choke 90 seconds into the second round. But what came to an even bigger shock than his game plan was when he announced his retirement after the fight. He said he had another job non-MMA related that he wanted to pursue, and that he was tired of getting punched and rolling on the ground. He thanked the fans for their support, and that was it. Just when everyone thought there was a new big name in the very shallow light heavyweight division, he was gone as quickly as he rose in the rankings. Since this fight in 2017, there have been rumors of Anthony coming back and fighting Francis Ngannou, which would be a haymaker heaven. In August of 2019, he said he was going to come back in 2020 to fight either Alistair Overeem or Junior Dos Santos at heavyweight, but he has yet to re-enter the USADA testing pool, which makes me believe that it's the end for Johnson. So after going 22-6, where he had a good career at welterweight and then an amazing one at light heavyweight, how good was Anthony Rumble Johnson actually? I would consider his career to be a prime example of success a fighter can find in MMA by fighting at their natural weight. In a sport where fighters cut as much as possible to have the size advantage come fight night, Anthony realized that the advantage was not worth it, as the huge weight cut took a toll on his body, and that resulted in him not being able to fight at his full potential. But we got to see it when he moved up to 205, where his striking power was even greater than what it was at 170. So much that his ground game began to take a back seat and would only really be used to defend takedowns, in comparison to welterweight, where he was actively looking to take down his opponents and secure a submission, which I think played a part in his endurance on fight night, as maintaining top control isn't as tiring as picking apart an opponent on the feet. But that all changed at 205, as Johnson became one of the most dangerous strikers in MMA. He was fast, aggressive, accurate, and overall, a very intimidating opponent that put fear into fighters before he fought them. In fact, if there was no Francis Ngannou, I would easily give the title of strongest puncher to Anthony Johnson. But he truly flourished at light heavyweight during a time when John Jones and Daniel Cormier were in their prime, at the top top of the division and considered as two of the greatest fighters of all time. And like Alexander Gustafsson, to have his name and career alongside legends like them truly says a lot about how good he was, which also means there was no shame in not winning a championship at the time. But it does make me wonder what the fight between him and Jon Jones would have looked like. I'm not saying he'd win, but I'm also not saying he'd lose due to Jones beating Cormier and Cormier beating Johnson. In fact, Jon struggles against fighters who close the distance, and that's what Anthony does a lot of. But regardless of not being able to win UFC gold, no one has been able to find the same amount of success after moving up 2 weight classes. Some people can't even find it after moving up 1, but he found it and also built a reputation of having some of the hardest hitting hands in the sport's history. And to display that at welterweight and then move up 2 divisions to showcase it even better than before is what made the story of Anthony Johnson so special and amazing to witness. My name is Kiiyon, and this was my take on how good Anthony Rumble Johnson actually was. Do you agree, disagree, or have something else to add? Please put it in the comments down below, because I'd love to read it. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more content like this. But that's all out for now, so I'll see you on my next one.